The Washington Commanders' preferred head coaching candidate is now free and available to take a new job. But which candidate is going to be the one that gets it? That and more on today's episode of Locked On Commanders.
Your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into this episode of Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast covering the Washington Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day every day. And don't forget that you can subscribe for free on YouTube or wherever you're getting this podcast. And you can continue this conversation with me by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders and become a Locked On Commanders insider today. You'll get news, inside information, exclusive content, one-on-one conversations with me via text message. No hashtags, no apps, no threads to search through, just text messages from me to you. I was texting with my insiders all day during the AFC, NFC championship games, talking about implications for Washington, just the game in general, a whole lot of good stuff going on there. So join the Locked On Commanders Insider Program today. Go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Commanders to get in on the fun over there. I am David Harrison, credential member of the media covering your Washington Commanders for CommanderCountry.com, a part of Sports Illustrated's FanNation. And I'm here with you every Monday through Friday, along with our everydayers. And everydayers, you know, I greatly appreciate your support for this show. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedon. Use /LockedOnNFL, that is. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL in all lowercase letters to get a first deposit match up to $100. On today's episode, it's Mock Draft Monday, so we're looking at one of my favorites. Bucky Brooks of NFL Network dropped his first mock draft, so we're going to review that. Plus, I dropped my latest, and we've got an insider mock to dive into. But first, Commanders head coaching candidates Ben Johnson and Mike Macdonald both had their squads. Ben Johnson's Detroit Lions offense, Mike Macdonald's Baltimore Ravens defense, both on the field for the AFC and NFC championship games on Sunday. Unfortunately for them, they both lost. The Detroit Lions lost to the San Francisco 49ers, 34-31, and the Baltimore Ravens lost to the Kansas City Chiefs, 17-10. Now, fortunately for Washington Commanders fans, that means that you are almost guaranteed. I would say it's about a 90% likelihood that you're going to have a new head coach by the time we launch a new week of Locked On Commanders. Like by the time we come here on next Monday or for next Monday's episode, you will probably know who your new head coach is. I am fairly confident, obviously, by putting the 90% mark on there, that one of these coaches is going to be named the new head coach of the Washington Commanders. I feel like that's it, guys. I feel like this is really a two-horse race. We've talked about this the entire time as being a three-candidate race. If there is a third coach, realistically, that has a shot in this thing, I want to say it's probably Bobby Slowick. I know that Dan Quinn has another interview. Anthony Weaver, position coach and assistant head coach for the Baltimore Ravens, also had an interview. Things like that. There's certainly other guys that they're talking to, but I just the vibe is, and I can't tell you that a team source told me this. I can't tell you that Josh Harris told me this or anything like that. But it just feels like a two-horse race. And there are people, not a lot of people, but there are enough people who are kind of shook after watching their teams get eliminated from the playoffs on whether or not they're actually the right fit. So let's start with Ravens defense coordinator Mike Macdonald because his team played first. Ravens, again, fall to the Kansas City Chiefs, 17-10. Here's the thing. Here's where people are shook a little bit by Mike Macdonald is that his offense, or his defense rather, allowed 17 points to the Kansas City Chiefs in the first half of the AFC Championship game. And they gave up 221 yards in the first half. They allowed the Chiefs to convert 5 of 9 third downs in the first half. Travis Kelce had 9 catches, 96 yards, a touchdown in the first half. And then Patrick Mahomes completed 20 of 25 pass attempts for 161 yards and a touchdown, all in the first half. So certainly not a great first half of football for the Baltimore Ravens defense. But the real true mark of a leader and an effective coach is the ability to rally the troops when things are hard and the ability to adjust the game plan, adjust the strategy when things are not going well. In the second half, the Baltimore Ravens defense allowed 0 points to those same Kansas City Chiefs. They allowed only 101 yards of total offense. They held the Chiefs offense to 3 for 8 on third downs. Kelce was held to 2 catches for 20 yards. Mahomes did complete 10 of 14 passes, still pretty good completion percentage, but he only got 80 yards off those. That's 8 yards per completion on average in the second half. And that includes All of that includes a 32-yard gain on one play towards the end of the game that really kind of sealed the deal. And of course, you don't want to see that 32-yard completion at the end of the game, right? You want to see that defense hold up and get off the field and give their offense one last chance. But the bottom line is, even with the defense playing more undisciplined than usual, there were some really dumb penalties, some really dumb blown coverages and things like that. They committed some uncharacteristic mistakes. The Baltimore Ravens defense 100% gave that team an opportunity to come back against the Chiefs and potentially win that game and head to the Super Bowl. Held the Chiefs offense to 4 points lower than their season average, despite the fact they gave up 17 points in the first half. And like I said, bottom line, just gave the Ravens a chance. And the Ravens offense responded by only scoring 3 points in the last 3 quarters of the game. Outside the first quarter of the game, the Ravens only scored 3 total points. That is why the Ravens lost, not because of Mike Macdonald's unit. They actually showed some resilience. Speaking of showing resilience, Lions offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, his first 4 plays of the game really stood out, right? Because you guys have heard me every day, as you've heard me talk about this a lot during our pregame episodes where I talk about here's some areas where the opposing defense seems to be weak. Probe those areas with your scripted plays. All right. If they don't usually defend runs to the right very well, let's run to the right. If they don't usually defend the screen very well, let's run some screens. Let's run some things that the stats and the analytics and the tape tell us our opponent's not good at playing against. Let's see if we can be successful there. And once we find a place to be successful, let's continue to do those things. Offensive coordinator Ben Johnson's first 4 play calls of the game as the Detroit Lions took on the San Francisco 49ers, a stretch run right, a run between the tackles, a play action where the play was actually going to the left to a wide open tight end, and an end around from left to right to a receiver for a touchdown. Literally using the entire stretch of the field, you used a receiver, you used 2 running backs, and you used a tight end. Using all your weapons, moving the defense, getting your quarterback on the move, versatility, creativity, and involvement. That is what you saw in 4 plays out of Ben Johnson. And guys, that stuff, though, let's just be honest, that's stuff we didn't necessarily see for entire games worth of game plans with the Washington Commanders last year. Ben Johnson's offense had 7 drives finish in scoring range or with a touchdown. Now, while the Detroit Lions lose this game, I don't put this loss on Ben Johnson or the Detroit Lions offense specifically. I look at this as a situation where you could actually look at Ben Johnson's unit and find that resiliency there. As the 49ers are coming back to rally, to tie the game, to take over the game, to get the lead late in the game's still in reach. His coordinator, Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell's coordinator, coordinates, right, drives that get the Detroit Lions offense into field goal range with a chance to tie the game. What does Dan Campbell do? He opts to go for it on 4th down. They fail. They turn the ball over on downs. Broadcaster Greg Olsen is talking about you can't judge the decision based off the outcome. You have to judge it based on the decision. The decision was good. Every day, as you already know, I am very consistent in my 4th down, my going for it on 4th down feelings. My consistent feelings are the same here as they are with every other game I cover in the NFL. Going for it on 4th down when it's unnecessary and it doesn't actually give you any more than maybe a feeble advantage is to me, it shows weakness. It shows that there's only 2 things you're doing as going for it on 4th down that early. You're either showing that you can't beat your opponent without being drastic, or you're going to just run over your team and you're just looking to rub their face in it. Well, the Detroit Lions weren't in that position, so the only other answer is the other one. You're showing the 49ers that you can't beat them without drastic decision-making. Now, I'm going to give Dan Campbell credit here because his mentality is just aggression. His mentality is something going to punch you in the face and score touchdowns on every possession. That's who he's been. That's what got the Detroit Lions to the NFC Championship game. So I will give him some credit there, but that doesn't take away the fact that I disagree with the call regardless of the result, okay? But the bottom line is this. Even with the 49ers rallying, even with some uncharacteristic drops from Lions players, Ben Johnson was able to get his offense up and moving to the point where they got to or inside the 49ers 30-yard line 3 times in the second half. That has the potential. They scored a touchdown on one of those. They had turnovers on down in field goal range on 2 others. So that means you have a scoring potential of 13 points when you scored 24 points in the first half. That's 37 points that Ben Johnson's offense put themselves in situation to produce for this team. They lost 34-31. Now, I'm not saying that if they take those field goals, the Niners don't have another miraculous comeback and score touchdowns where they got field goals and all that other stuff. I'm not saying that happens, but the bottom line is, did the Detroit Lions offense put this team in position to have 37 points on the scoreboard? Yes, they did. Ben Johnson did that. The San Francisco 49ers defense gave up 17.5 points per game in the regular season. Ben Johnson's offense, led by Jared Goff, put up twice that amount, or at least had the opportunity to put up twice that amount, more than twice that amount in the NFC Championship game on the road in San Francisco. That is an impressive job, not a defeating job. So if you have confidence or if you have concerns about Ben Johnson or Mike Macdonald, hopefully those examples there show you both of their units were resilient. They weren't perfect, but they were resilient, and they each gave their team chances to win their games. So the eyes now on the future. When will the head coach be hired? When will the head coach be announced? Mike Macdonald's in-person interview with the Washington Commanders is happening Monday. Ben Johnson's is happening Tuesday. Dan Quinn, who I know a lot of my insiders are worried about, his in-person is supposed to be on Thursday or later this week. I don't know that they even get to the Dan Quinn interview before a hire is announced or a hire is being made, and they just cancel those appointments. So we'll look to the future. Mock Draft Monday is coming up. Today is Monday, so we got a Mock Draft Monday. I lay one down. I've got an insider lay one down coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, and it is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports because it's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then tune in to find out if your predictions come true. This weekend on Prize Picks, I took Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce for more than 39.5 receiving yards, Ravens kicker Justin Tucker to make more than 1.5 field goals, 49ers running back Christian McCaffrey to gain more than half a yard rushing, and Lions running back Jahmyr Gibbs to gain more than 75.5 total yards of offense. I made my pick, submitted my entry in less than 60 seconds, and it really added another layer to my viewing experience. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that promo code LockedOnNFL, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks.com/LockedOnNFL is the site. Prize Picks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Continuing on now with today's episode of Locked On Commanders. Thanks again for being a Locked On Commanders, your first listener, your first view today and every day. Everydayers, come back tomorrow. We're bound to have some sort of news pertaining to this head coaching search coming. So come back tomorrow. We will talk about all of that. My plan right now, barring anything that just takes over the entire episode, I'm actually going to drop out a fleshed out staff for each of those two primary head coach candidates, Mike Macdonald and Ben Johnson, insiders. Some of that is going to sound a little bit familiar from our command huddle this past weekend. I already kind of told you about that. So that'll be coming tomorrow. I'm going to give you each guy's offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators. And I'm even going to give you a special teams coordinator just because I'm feeling generous. And honestly, my answer is a little bit simple and you might not like it. So come back for that tomorrow. Locked On is launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube as well. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with your local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, moving on to Mock Draft Monday. Now that we've talked a little bit about the head coaching search, let's turn our attention now to the NFL draft. Of course, the NFL world is converging on Mobile, Alabama this week. The draft starts in Mobile is the slogan of the Reese's Senior Bowl, and that is indeed the case. Scouts, GMs, coaches, all kinds of people are going to be in Mobile checking out these prospects. And so we're going to talk about these prospects. What could potentially come out of them? Insider Keith sent me a mock draft scenario to follow, and this is something that we'll be doing this offseason is I'll be letting my insiders send me trade scenarios or draft scenarios or what have you. I even got one comment from someone who thought they were funny and said draft nothing but special teams players. And you know what? I could actually do that. If one of my insiders does that, I will actually do that for you. But I don't think you're going to like how smart I think I am in doing that whole thing. So we'll see what comes of that. But Insider Keith sent me a trade opportunity, and basically the trade scenario is this. The Washington Commanders trade the number 2 overall pick to the New England Patriots. In exchange, they get picks number 3, number 34, and number 68. So those 3 picks in this year's draft. I actually messaged Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots, and I said, hey, Mike, what do you think of this trade potential? Is this something that you could see this version of the New England Patriots doing post Bill Belichick? Or not? Or do you think this is completely overblown? Because we don't want to get too ridiculous out here, right? He said no. He said he thinks that under the Jared Mayo era and, if Bill Belichick was here, absolutely not. But with Jared Mayo in, and especially if they have their eye on one of the specific quarterbacks that is remaining on the board, then he could absolutely see them going all in to get the quarterback that they want so they could make this trade. So let's pretend that happens. And so the Washington Commanders now give up the number 2 overall pick to the New England Patriots. And in return, like I said, they get number 3, 34, and 68. So for this mock draft, again, I'm only doing 3-round mock drafts until the compensatory picks are announced, because after you get through 3 rounds, the compensatory picks come in. So the guy you get, with the second pick in the 4th round, not going to be there likely in the 4th round, because he's going to be a 3rd round comp pick more than likely. And that's just the chip of the iceberg on how these the draft positions are going to fluctuate, right? So first 3 rounds, here's what we have now. The Washington Commanders now have number 3, number 34, number 40, number 67, number 68, and number 100. That's 3 picks in the top 50. That's 6 in the top 100. So again, Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots approved this trade as a possibility, not saying that he's advocating for it necessarily, but yes, it is a possibility, especially if the New England Patriots love them some Drake May, which is exactly who the simulator had them take. So Caleb Williams went to the Chicago Bears. We made this trade, and the New England Patriots got themselves Drake May. With the number 3 overall pick, I took quarterback Jaden Daniels. I went ahead and went with that quarterback because I've said this before every day, as you've already heard me say this, and this is not a full-blown analysis on Jaden Daniels yet, but where we are today, it's much less risky to take a young quarterback, one that maybe isn't completely finished, like Drake May, like Jaden Daniels, heck, like Caleb Williams in some people's eyes, if you're trading back, because now we're not just drafting Jaden Daniels, we're drafting Jaden Daniels and the number 34 and the number 40 overall picks. We're actually getting 3 bites at the apple to make that number 2 overall pick turn into a blue chip contributor. So Jaden is not alone in trying to make this 1st round pick successful, if you follow what I'm putting down, because the very next pick, number 34, actually comes to us by way of the New England Patriots. So before we even pick one of our own organic selections, we're already getting 2 bites at the apple of turning number 2 into a successful player. And we're going offensive tackle Troy Fautanu out of Washington. I have a feeling you're going to hear his name a lot this mock draft season until he moves firmly into the 1st round and he's just no longer available in the 2nd round for me. He is a left tackle. So we got ourselves a quarterback and a left tackle to go with him. Pick number 36. This is one of the picks that the Washington Commanders already owns. We're going defensive line here. We're going Byron Murphy, the 2nd out of Texas, not an edge rusher. He is an interior defensive lineman. So in this scenario, you're probably looking at Jonathan Allen no longer being part of the team. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I'm just saying if that happens, of course, we probably have some other draft compensation. So kind of putting the cart before the horse there. You can go ahead and call me out for it. It's okay. I'll take that. Number 40, we go back to the offensive line. Offensive tackle Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. He is a right tackle. So now we got a quarterback. We got a left tackle. We got a right tackle. Number 67, we're going tight end Jatavion Sanders out of Texas. Number 68, linebacker Jeremiah Trotter out of Clemson. Number 100, we're going guard Cooper Beebe out of Kansas State. He's a left guard. So we got ourselves a new left tackle, right tackle, left guard, quarterback, D lineman, tight end, and a new linebacker. I think we got a lot of good players here, a lot of blue chip players here. And we look at the PFF board, they actually give me an A for this draft. So they give me an A for Jaden Daniels, A- for Troy Fautanu, A- for Byron Murphy. They give me a B- for Tyler Guyton, probably because he's a right tackle. A for Jatavion Sanders, A- for Jeremiah Trotter, A- for Cooper Beebe, and they give me an A- overall. So that is the grade according to Pro Football Focus. Keith's version at number 3, he took Marvin Harrison Jr., the wide receiver out of Ohio State. 34, he took quarterback J.J. McCarthy out of Michigan. 36, he took tackle Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma, so similar pick there. 40, he took tackle Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, a very solid left tackle prospect in the middle of the draft. 67, he went linebacker Edgerrin Cooper out of Texas A&M. 68, he went edge Adisa Isaac out of Penn State. Very big fan of Adisa. I did not get an edge, so potentially a flaw there, but I went offensive line twice instead. 100 overall, tight end Brevin Spann-Ford out of Minnesota. So that is my version, his version of the trade number 2 to the New England Patriots for those 3 pick scenario. But we've got an expert mock draft. Bucky Brooks has been doing this a lot longer than I have, and he's probably been a lot more successful at it than I have. So let's see what he's got coming up in his first mock draft of the season. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This next segment is brought to you by our sponsor, BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest, whether it's big, whether it's small. Certain things can really start to get to you sometimes, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who is unbiased in your life. So today, I want to say how I really feel about something. You might even been thinking about the same thing this week, this month, this year, whatever it is, and it's the preference of offensive head coaches versus defensive head coaches. Ultimately, the head coach needs to lead both sides of the ball. The head coach isn't just responsible for one side of the ball, and he's also responsible, by the way, for the special team. So this obsession over wanting an offensive head coach or a defensive head coach, to me, just doesn't make a lot of sense. That was therapeutic for me. Therapy can be different for everyone, and most of us honestly have bigger problems than what's going on with our favorite sports team. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. So visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Final segment here of Locked On Commanders Mock Draft Monday. So how we're going to do Mock Draft Monday this week or this year. I'm going to drop my mock draft. Sometimes it'll be scenario based. Sometimes it'll be a full first rounder. Sometimes it'll be just my own third rounder, what have you. We're going to mix it up as the year goes on. And then we're going to have an insider mock draft, one of my insiders sharing their insight into what they think is going to happen with this team or what they want to have happen with this team. Then we're going to turn to an expert. A lot of them are going to be Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks are two of my favorites. We already did Daniel Jeremiah's first mock draft of the season last week. So this week, we're turning our attention to Mr. Bucky Brooks, who dropped his the day after Daniel Jeremiah dropped his own. And with his first mock draft, he has the Chicago Bears taking Caleb Williams, number 1 overall. I believe both he and DJ had that same result. They both also had the Washington Commanders taking quarterback Drake May out of North Carolina with the number 2 overall pick. Bucky saying, quote, "The Commanders should take May and sit him behind his former North Carolina teammate Sam Howell until he is ready to assume control as the franchise quarterback. May offers immense talent and potential, but with only 2 years of starting experience at UNC, he would benefit from an apprenticeship before taking over as QB1 down the road," end quote. Now, this is interesting because I think it kind of satisfies two schools of thought, where one school of thought thinks that Sam Howell, you saw the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, is the real Sam Howell, and he's a total bust, which he's a 5th round pick, so I don't know how he can be a bust, but he's a total bust. He's never going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. And if he goes out there, honestly, like, you might already believe it, but for those who don't believe it, he goes out there and performs that way, then even the ones who don't believe it right now will really have no choice but to admit finally that, yes, Sam Howell's not cut out to be the quarterback, if that's what you think. The other part of it is the team needs to go after a young quarterback. Drake May is obviously a young quarterback with a lot of potential. A lot of people have him as number 2 quarterback on their board. Some people have Jayden Daniels up there, but obviously both DJ and Bucky at least see him as the better fit for Washington than they do Jayden, even if they don't have Drake as their number 2 player necessarily. We don't know that yet. Their top 50 has yet to come out. Bottom line is, it kind of satisfies a lot of monikers. I would assume there's probably a veteran in the mix here as well in that quarterback room. Jayden Daniels does end up going number 3 in Bucky's mock draft to the New England Patriots. So obviously Bucky doesn't think there's this like Grand Canyon size gap between the two quarterbacks, but he does have Drake May ahead of Jayden Daniels, at least in his first mock draft of the season. Number 4, the Cardinals take Marvin Harrison Jr., the receiver out of Ohio State that Keith took at number 3 in his mock draft. Number 5, the Los Angeles Chargers take Georgia tight end Brock Bowers. That's the top 5. Looking at the NFC East, the New York Giants at number 6 take wide receiver Rome Odunze out of Washington. The Philadelphia Eagles at number 22 take cornerback Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. The Dallas Cowboys, number 24, take offensive tackle Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma. And that kind of brought me to the next part of this. I want to look through, like I said to you guys, going through these mock drafts, guys are going to shift all offseason long, all draft preparation long, as more evaluations get done, as more information comes in, as more sources start to speak. These guys are going to shift up and down the boards for the next 3 months, before we finally get to the actual NFL draft. And we saw 3 players, that we got in our mock draft through the PFF mock draft simulator in later than first rounds, go in the first round. So defensive lineman Byron Murphy, the second out of Texas, who I think I got in with our first pick in the second round. He ends up going to the Seattle Seahawks at number 16, according to Bucky Brooks. Offensive tackle Troy Fatanu, who we got out of Washington. The left tackle ends up going to the Houston Texans at number 23 overall. I just mentioned Tyler Guyton, the right tackle out of Oklahoma. He goes number 24 to the Dallas Cowboys. And just for prosperity's focus, cornerback Quinyon Mitchell out of Toledo, a prospect that I told everydayers I'm very excited about. I'm kind of very interested in, and again, I've got to see what the coaching hires are going to be and what that means for scheme and all that stuff. But just in a vacuum, really a big fan of Quinyon Mitchell's game out of Toledo. He goes number 31 overall to the San Francisco 49ers. So obviously Bucky Brooks is pretty high on Quinyon as well. So that is our mock draft from Bucky. Again, he's just doing a first rounder right now. So the Washington Commanders get Drake May at number 2 overall. That's going to wrap up this week's mock draft Monday. Coming up tomorrow, again, if there's any specific news about the coaching staff, we'll obviously talk about that. If not, we're still going to be talking about the future of the coaching staff. I'm going to flesh out Mike Macdonald's staff for him. I'm going to flesh out Ben Johnson's staff for him. That's all on tomorrow's episode. In the meantime, you got questions or comments, throw them in the YouTube comment section or become a Locked On Commanders insider and text me directly by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every dayers. Thanks for coming through on a regular basis like you do. Thank you so much for making me a part of your day, part of your routine. Until we speak again, please be safe, be kind. I'll see you next time for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.